So, Rob, we have on the one hand these tweets sent out, as we saw in that report, by the president. If required, heads will roll, calling for a national dialogue. He is President Mnangagwa. And on the other hand, the police, the army now out in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, how much of that does he really mean? Because if you remember back last year in August after the election, he said you'd be the president of all the Zimbabwean people, and the promises effectively came to nothing. There's been very little economic reform, there's been very little political reform. Efforts by the main opposition party, the MDC, to enter into a dialogue with the ZANU-PF, the ruling party, and with Mr. Mnangagwa, President Mnangagwa, have been rebuffed, even mocked, according to the leader of the MDC. So when he comes back from his tour around the world and says things like that, well, it's encouraging on the one hand, and perhaps does suggest that he's taken in the message he's clearly been getting on those visits around the world, that this will not do, that this sort of violence is unacceptable. But I suspect that many people, particularly on the opposition, will be saying, okay, fine, the words are very nice, but now let's see some real measures that suggest that he's going to move in that direction. And there will be questions about whether he's able to move in that direction.
So, as always with Zimbabwe, we have conflicting signs. On the one hand, activists saying that the death toll is much higher than thought. Some witnesses claiming that police have even gone into hospitals to take victims out, and others are too afraid to go to hospitals for treatment. But we also have the Supreme Court striking down this ban on the internet. And according to Wire reports, the internet is back in a lot of
I mean, one of the things about Zimbabwe is that even in the years of Robert Mugabe, the judicial system managed to keep its head above water. The courts always managed to retain a degree of independence, and it looks like that is still the case under Mnangagwa. But yes, there's no doubt that the violence was really extreme. We've heard reports of at least 12 people being killed, and you said in your introduction to that last report that that could turn out to be just a fraction. It's interesting that even the Human Rights Commission, the government's own Human Rights Commission, said the violence was unacceptable from the side of the security forces. That what were the army doing on the streets? What were they doing, breaking into people's homes and beating them up, torturing them? You know, the level of the violence is such that it seems that even the government's own Human Rights Commission is shocked by it. And not just by that, it's by the targeting. Now, one could argue that President Mnangagwa has a point, that a lot of the violence we saw from the demonstrators was, as he put it, wanton and cynical destruction. But on the other hand, it wasn't the rioters that the security forces went after. They went after leaders of the MDC. They arrested 6 MPs. They went after the Trade Union Congress. They arrested Japhet Moyo, the head of the Trade Union Congress. They went after civil society, not after the people who are committing the crimes or the violence on the streets.
And we're getting these reports that there was this move on Monday to try to have some kind of a motion of defiance within the ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF, of course, the party of the country's longtime president, Robert Mugabe. Yeah. And there really does seem to be a rift between hardliners and moderates.
Yeah, there does seem to be a rift, and that might explain many things. At the moment, we don't have an awful lot of hard information, hard facts to go on. But it was interesting that this happened when Mnangagwa was away. His vice president, Constantino Chiwenga, who was the commander who led the coup against Robert Mugabe in 2017, is in charge. And it's suspected that he has a much more hardline position on what should be done in government than does Mnangagwa, who at least says the right things, even if he doesn't necessarily do them. There does apparently seem to have been an attempt to garner support for an impeachment attempt against Mnangagwa, but it failed for lack of numbers. It's interesting that Chiwenga met Mnangagwa at the airport when he returned to Harare and embraced him. Now, whether that was just an attempt on the part of Chiwenga, having failed in the impeachment attempt, to ingratiate himself with Mnangagwa, I don't know. But clearly something is going on at the heart of ZANU-PF.
Right.